This episode of the Rogue Deck Builder is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com, the #1 source for games and gaming accessories, and by GatheringMagic.com, the #1 source for Magic the Gathering news and articles. Hi there, it's Kevin with GatheringMagic.com and Roguedeckbuilder.com here with the wrap-up video for the Soul Sisters Rogue Deck Builder deck. This is the deck that did get me the PTQ, but oh wow, did it not perform very well. I think the biggest difference between this and the PTQ is I went up against a lot of UWR and Jund in the PTQ, and those were decks that Soul Sisters is very favorable against, especially with the inclusion of the Ariok champions. And as it is something that stays on the board that they have a hard time getting rid of, that will give you enough life to stabilize until you can start to outcard advantage them. Now, against this pool, losing that first round was probably the difference between us playing actually a lot of Jund decks and pod decks and UWR decks compared to playing every combo deck in the entire world. But I mean, it's pretty cool. You got to see a bunch of the fringe decks, the tier, I guess, 2 decks, the not quite there yet decks, and Soul Sisters can beat them. It doesn't seem like that we had enough sideboard to really face the entire field. Now, I'm going to just talk about sideboard cards you can actually bring in versus those decks. So I guess the one combo deck that we were able to beat out, the Crack Clan Ironworks, was because of the Stony Silence was just too much for him to deal with. Again, if we didn't have these Stony Silence, we didn't have this sort of package, it would have been a pretty difficult matchup for us to beat. So the problem with Soul Sisters is it's pretty mid-range. Even though we can consider this an aggressive deck, a white weenie type strategy, it isn't as fast as an all-out aggro deck as you see in like the Wild Nacatl decks and the burn decks. And so those decks just try to kill the combo player before they're able to actually go off on their turn 3 or turn 4. They just put way too much pressure that they just finish them off. So anyway, against the Infect deck, it's definitely Celestial Flare. This card is between the Path to Exiles and Celestial Flares, especially the Celestial Flares, as they cannot give it hexproof. This would put us over the top against the Infect decks. You wait till they go all out on a kill, and then you Celestial Flare, take out their guy, their Blighted Agent, and that is basically victory there. Again, what you'd side out is anything slow. The Ranger of Eoses would come out, and maybe even like the Honor of the Peers. I think Honor of the Peers are fine, though, because you can still get your really aggressive draw on like a turn 3 Spectral Processions, actually just kill them. So that would definitely be the go-to card against the Infect deck. Now on to round number 2 against the Hexproof deck, Celestial Flare again would be amazing, because I'm pretty sure that Sacrifice gets around the, let's look up one of these like Umbra cards, how it's worded, and I'm pretty sure that, like, okay, so Totem Armor does, we should lead, okay, if enchanted creature would be destroyed. I think Sacrifice is not considered a destroyed ability, and again, a judge can weigh in on this one. I think that if it gets sacrificed, it's kind of like it's a cost. The opponent has to put it in the grave. It has to kill it. It's more than just being destroyed, because I know that it goes beyond indestructibility. So I'd have to get someone to weigh in on if a Totem Armor just falls off, or if Celestial Flare does get through. So if it does get completely through and they make it Sacrifice, that is a bomb against that deck. Another one, of course, the best card against the deck would be, there's Back to Nature. It's something of light is what it's called. It's destroy all enchantments. And I believe that it is the white version of it. Well, here's Clean Fall. That one actually works, but this one, I believe, or this Paraceline, this one's good as well. Destroy all enchantments, gain 1 life for each enchantment destroyed. But the right one is going to be, let's look at modern cards here and take away green. Hopefully we can find it quicker. Oh, Tempest of Light is what it's called. Instant speed, which is very, very key. Instant speed, destroy all enchantments. So if you're worried about the Hexproof deck, this card is an absolute boss versus the Hexproof deck. So it is something you can definitely consider bringing in. Especially, you could just even go more Sun and Gross. That actually gives you the ability to destroy a few more of their key enchantments. Against the Hexproof deck, what you really need to get rid of is the Ethereal Armors and the Daybreak Cornets, and then the deck is a little bit clunky against Soul Sisters because you just ignore their creatures. The thing about Daybreak Cornet is it gives it vigilance, and that a lot of times makes it block and attack, and it gives it first strike. It just gives it way too much, and the Ethereal Armor is what makes it the card so huge. If they don't have either one of those, then they're looking at like even like an Unflinching Courage and a Rancor, something you can definitely deal with because they have to attack in with that. It's yes, it is dealing damage, but on the backswing with your 6/6 lifelinkers, a lot of times you can keep doing the exact same amount of damage, and eventually you'll draw into the Pride Mate and go above. Your Pride Mate will get above that guy there. One or two creatures that has a bazillion enchantments on it. So again, without Ethereal Armor, without Daybreak Cornet, it's an easy matchup. And I think Tempest of Lights would really, if you can destroy two of those and then even get like an Umbra or two off of the creature with Tempest of Light, that can put you in the driver's seat, and then the deck just starts drawing a little bit dead. They do run a light on the lands and ways to actually destroy lands to actually draw more cards, but still, the whole strategy is to get as many of the enchantments on a single creature as possible, and then just start swinging away. Again, I probably shouldn't have taken out the Path to Exiles because it does get rid of one of their key cards in the guy that draws a card for every aura you cast and gets +2/+2 for every aura. So definitely keep the Path to Exiles in there. So again, Celestial Flare and Tempest of Light is what you would side in, and you'd of course side out, if you're siding in Tempest of Lights, you'd side out your own Honor of the Pures. So anywho, so the next big combo deck, again, the Storm is pretty easily dealt with by Rest in Peace and Dried Militants, and like Leyline of Sanctity. And then we saw like the Crack Clan Ironworks deck being taken care of with Stony Silences. Now what you'd want to do against the Amulet of Vigor deck is definitely would be between Leonin Arbiter. Right here, this guy, it says players can't search libraries, they have to pay 2 to search libraries. A lot of times that's enough to actually deal with it. The problem with Leonin Arbiter, though, is that then they can actually pay that and end up searching their library. But the other card would definitely be the Aven Mind Sensor, which is this guy right here that has Flash. So as they cast that Primeval Titan, you could flash that in, and then he would not be able to search his library. They'd have to search his top 4 cards. Might be able to still find his combo within that. That just seems like a very tough deck for us to deal with at all. So the problem with those combo decks is there are so many decks that just have main board hate against that. Any sort of counterspell deck seems pretty good against the Amulet of Vigor deck. Any deck that has a first turn Thoughtseize or Inquisition seems incredibly good against combo decks. And that's what I was hoping to see, is a lot of Thoughtseize decks, a lot of counterspell decks. And then Soul Sisters tends to be really good. One of the things with Soul Sisters is if they first turn Thoughtseize, you know Big E, because all of your cards are about the same power level. You have no huge combo. Yes, what they can do is they can get rid of one of your God Draw combos, like a first turn Soul's Attendant into a second turn Giant's Primate. They can grab your Primate, but it's still a card for a card, and eventually they'll draw into more of your Giant's Primates or more of your Sarah's Ascendants or Ranger of Eoses and Spectral Processions paired up with your Honor of the Pures, and then just out card advantage them, out kind of tempo them, and get in there for the win. That's how usually the Jund matchup goes down, as well as the UWR matchup. And again, like I said in the intro, in the deck tech of this video, Soul Sisters naturally does very well against Kiki Pod. It does naturally well against Melira Pod. It does very good against UWR Control, very good against Jund, and very good against Splinter Twin. And right there, I would say, is 5 out of the 6 of the Tier 1 decks. And if you put Nicodle and Burn into the mix, then there's 2 more decks that this Soul Sister decks. Nicodle is not a win. Wild Nicodle cannot beat Soul Sisters. I'll say that again. It cannot beat it. They have to have the godly of all godliest draws for Wild Nicodle to beat Soul Sisters and whatnot, because it's just too much life gain, and a lot of these cards just start beginning to outclass the Giant's Primate, outclasses the Nicodle. And again, we have our second turn drop. They have their second turn have a attacking 3/3 Wild Nicodle. We have a second turn potential of a 6/6 flying lifelinker, which is a huge advantage over that deck, as well as the Giant's Primate can easily outclass their true up in the Tarmogoyf. And then of course Burn, this is just if you draw Martyr of the Sands and are able to activate that without them having like a Skullcrack, a lot of times that's just game. I mean, second turn you have the ability to Martyr of the Sands for 15 life, puts you at a healthy 35. It's very hard for Burn to come back from that. And of course, what's really good about also is like if they use Hellspark Elementals and you have a Soul Warden out, you're getting 2 life off of each of the Hellspark Elemental. When they unearth it, you still get a life, and basically the Hellspark Elemental gets in there for a lot less than what they rely on it against other decks. So against these tier 2 decks is what I like to call Coddle and Burn and a lot of these other creature-based strategies. The Soul Sisters is a very, very good deck. So unfortunately for us, though, on this one, we did run up against a lot of combo decks. You do not see Crack Clan Ironworks and Amulet of Vigor and the Infect and Hexproof. I mean, Hexproof is getting a little more popular. Like I said, it comes in waves of popularity. People will play it when it does get in a Pro Tour, and then of course people put in the necessary hate versus the deck. See, the thing about it is it does pretty decent against the control decks like UWR, but it's not an unwinnable matchup. It's very easy for UWR to actually beat it with cards that are timed well. I mean, a lot of like any sort of bounce spell is pretty hard for it too. If you bounce back the creature, they lose all those enchantments on it, and they really have no. Well, you can't. Never mind. That's hexproof, so they can't. But there's other ways to actually bounce it back, like bounce all permanents back and whatnot. I don't even know if I'm actually just talking here rather than explaining. But I mean, there's ways around, is what I'm trying to say. And of course, UWR has access to hit cards against hexproof. And again, Jund is very good against the hexproof decks. Jund, first turn Inquisition or first turn Thoughtseize, take away that key card. Take away either if they have multiple creatures, what they do is they take away their Daybreak Coronet or their Ethereal Armor, and if they do not have either one of those, then what they do is just take away a creature, or even like an Unflinching Courage, and then you got your Abrupt Decays, you got your Maelstrom Pulses, you have your Liliana that makes them sack it, you have a lot of things that they have to deal with that a lot of times they cannot deal with Jund still being able to keep up the tempo, keep up the card advantage through Dark Confidants and whatnot. So anyway, that's a little bit of an overview. I'm not too worried about ever having to go up that lineup again. Again, I think it was losing in that first round to Infect put us in kind of what we would call the loser bracket, to where then you start facing a lot of the decks that are combo-ish, that are easily shut down by a few key cards here and there. And if that's the case, then it's really hard sometimes for Soul Sisters to come back from that, because you're just constantly playing combo decks. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this series. As always, feel free to comment and let me know what you'd put in the deck, or how maybe you would have played some of those matchups. This has been Kevin with Gathering Magic and Roguedeckbuilder.com. Thanks for watching.